Hey there, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, and those beyond the binary. My name is ZenkoSolo, and today I would like to talk to you all about Spider-Man and his current implementation inside of Marvel Rivals. This is a character who I personally enjoy a lot, and I don't really see a world where I'd be playing this game had he not been inside of it. However, I do think he does have some problems on a fundamental level that need to be addressed. Let me start by saying that I am by no means a top 1% Spider-Man player. I can't really get my layouts down right. Hopping is still a struggle, and ultimately I'm on controller, so I'm at a massive disadvantage by default. However, even in spite of those things, I'm still constantly trying to learn the character, and I'm definitely not going to be the person bottom fragging on any given team, so long as the enemy doesn't have like 3 supports. That all being said, I genuinely believe Spider-Man is going to need some form of work going forward, as the difficulty it takes to use him is quite simply not worth the amount of effort you have to put in for just how little returns you are going to get. Even top level players like Necros, who as of this moment are well known for having the best Spider-Man in the world, will occasionally have to swap off him just to go to Psylocke. And the reason why that's so important to mention is because Psylocke and Spider-Man quite literally do the same job. They dive the enemy backline, except Psylocke does it with less work and is more effective in that role. So if a player like this is putting in less hours in a different character and seeing better results than they are with their main, who serves the exact same purpose, then that's a bit of a problem. And again, I myself, even though I'm not a top level player, will occasionally be in situations where I just cannot do anything as Spider-Man. If the enemy team is too stuck together or has healing supports up, there's not really much you can do even with an ultimate. Unironically, 2 days ago now, I was in a match where I wasn't able to get but 3 kills in the entire first capture the point round, and then I switched to Hawkeye, and lo and behold, my team starts winning by a landslide. It is genuinely so frustrating when you put in so much effort to make something work, and then you switch to something which you've put in 4 times less, and it's just objectively better off the rip. As of this moment, that is exactly what playing Spider-Man feels like, and it's not particularly fair for those of us who actually dedicated the time, energy, and effort to get to a high level with him, only for it to still not really be viable. I am of the opinion that the harder something is to master in a video game, the more you should reward the player for having gone out of their way to master it. And this is by no means to say he should be the absolute best in the game with no counters and that way everybody, because that's dumb. This is a hero shooter. There's always going to be something that's going to be better than him. Simply put, he can't just be an okay character to play when you're dedicating hundreds of hours in order to fully master his kit. Now, for those who don't already know why Spider-Man is so difficult and why I'm saying all this to begin with, he is a character who, the second you get him, you need to go into your settings and turn off a certain bind just to make him function. Just by default, his web-slinging mechanic will automatically lock onto pretty much any surface nearby, which means you can't really control where you're going or what you're doing as him. So already, we just picked up the character, and we're having to turn off a setting to use him properly. That's the level of difficulty this character has, and it should be pretty representative of what the rest of your journey is going to look like. Now, this part, now you have to learn how to B-hop, how to animation cancel, and how to get in and get out of fights. And once you spend about 30 hours in training mode learning all of that, you also need to understand basic resource management. Every single one of Spider-Man's attacks, with the exception of his auto, is on a resource, and his auto attack only has a range of 3 meters. It is pathetically short. You have 5 webs, 3 swings, 1 pull, and 2 uppercuts, but your uppercuts cannot be chained, and your webs, I think, have like a second cooldown after you, so it's not really that big a deal. Put together, all of these things mean that there will be instances where Spider-Man is just dead weight, and he won't be able to do anything. No webs means you can't close the gap. No web shots mean you don't have a range attack, and by default, since your melee range is 3 meters, you're not going to be hitting anybody or even getting close. Also, while I'm not necessarily sure if this is still representative of him or not, I have been told Spider-Man is incapable of being overhealed, which means that no matter how much you try, he's not going to have anything more than his base HP unless somebody throws a shield on him. But in the time that I've been using him, this is how much damage I've blocked with shields, and I have about like 50 games on the guy. So at this point, Spider-Man is squishy. He has a lot of resources that without he can't really do anything. He has to use all of these resources just to secure a kill, and in the event that you run out, you just have to wait for them to recharge. On top of that, you have to learn animation cancels, and I still haven't even gotten into the worst part. Spider-Man is very much a map-dependent character. The web slinging that you use on him is going to vary heavily from map to map, and to my knowledge, there's no way to to practice this besides a real game. In other words, you're gonna have to trial by fire learn where all the medkit pickups are, learn where the invisible walls that are gonna stop you are, and learn the fastest way to get back to the point at any given moment. All of this put together makes for a character that is particularly difficult to use, and while I would argue that Psylocke is absolutely not deserving of a 5-star difficulty score, Peter Parker, Spider-Man, whatever the hell you want to call him, most certainly is. He is, no questions asked, the most difficult character in the game because he requires the most amount of in-game knowledge to make function on a basic level. But again, even when you apply all of this, there are going to be situations where he's useless, and not because the dive roll is useless, but because there are other characters in the dive roll who can just do it better than him. So with all that being said, what are my general proposals on how we can go about fixing this character? Well, let me start by prefacing that I don't really play very many hero shooters. This is the first one that I've actually cared enough to get into, because Concord failed off launch, and let's be honest, Overwatch is better to be appreciated on hentai websites than the actual game itself. So, I do think there are a few general improvements that could be done to make him better, and a lot of those generally boil down to his cooldowns. This is by far the most obvious one, and the one that I've seen the most cry for. There is absolutely no fucking reason why this character at his very core should have instances where he cannot do anything. In every Spider-Man's life, across all of the multiverses, there will eventually be a moment where you can't do jack shit, and I'm not talking about Uncle Ben. When your cartridges run out, when your pull's not charged, or when you can't do an uppercut, any amount of offensive approaches will, most of the time, lead into you dying. Now, at first glance, that may not seem like that big of a deal, and in regards to his web sling, I don't really think it is. Personally, I might not be good enough to be having this problem yet, but I've never been in a situation where I've needed more web slings, and it wasn't just because I was fucking up, I was running into walls, or I kept making some suboptimal plays. However, in regards to web shot and get over here, there have been dozens of occasions where I needed it to be ready, and it was not. So for starters, there is no fucking reason why his web shots should be on a cooldown based system instead of just being a reloadable cartridge like every other character. Some iterations of Spider-Man even use web cartridges. We see him in multiple, almost every form of media having damn near bottomless webs in 90% of situations. Only having 5 shots is fucking ridiculous, and it's only made even worse once you realize you need a web cluster on the enemy to do your big damage. You need web clusters to animation cancel. You need web clusters in order to go over towards the enemy with your web pull. Without web clusters, the only thing Spider-Man can realistically do is web shot over towards the enemies, uppercut, and immediately leave. But it's not worth doing because you don't have a tag and you're not gonna do that much damage. So without them, you cannot animation cancel anymore, you got no range pressure, you can't initiate pulling yourself towards the enemy, and on top of all of that, as if it wasn't bad enough, over 75% of your damage is just gone. Secondly, web pull. Does anybody want to fucking explain to me why when I miss this thing, it goes on a 10-second cooldown before I can do it again? And again, this would not be that big a deal if it actually locking onto the enemy was more responsive. And just so we're very clear, I'm not talking about the actual setting to lock on, I'm talking about the amount of time after hitting a web tracer that doesn't let it lock on. If you hit an enemy with a web tracer, hear the sound of them getting hit, and then immediately throw out the web shot, it's not in its lock-on mode yet, so you're more prone to missing, and when you miss, it just doesn't work. Now granted, there is some tech for this. If you do this, you can actually pull the enemy towards you instead of going in, and still have the damage buff from the web tracer to go into an uppercut, which is actually one of the fastest ways to kill on him. However, and just hear me out on this one, how come there can't be a setting that lets you choose which one of these ones you're actually going to go for? And more relevantly, can we at least, for the love of fucking God, have it be more responsive? It's very frustrating because, again, when you miss with this thing, it's going on a 10-second cooldown. Doesn't matter if you hit or not, which I think is kind of unfair. I don't understand why it has to go on cooldown if you miss. You're already locked in the animation anyway. You might as well just let us keep it. That's what you do for the web shooters. Now, I have actually heard that there are 2 buttons you can bind, but when I looked into this myself, it didn't really seem to work, aside from just giving me 2 that always locked on after a tracer. Maybe somebody knows something I don't, but, you know, it is what it is. Finally, let's talk about his range. Spider-Man's range on his punches are comically bad. They only have a distance of 3 meters, and there's no, like, haphazard lock-on system with anything that you do at this range, so you're pretty much just at the mercy of, is the enemy backpedaling? healing. If the enemy were to backstep 1 meter out and you were to immediately react and start following him, now he's 4 meters away and you won't be able to get in punching range no matter what you do. I actually have this moment, I'll see if I can find it in my replays, where there was like this person I would have killed had I had my sensitivity either a little higher or I was actually like, you know, punching with more range. And it is really jarring to see somebody as acrobatic as Spider-Man like throwing half punches at body level. Now finally, and I know I said the last one was the last thing, but the last thing I do want to talk about is just Spider-Man's general damage inside of Marvel Rivals. It doesn't matter who you are or how good you are with this character, there will always be a situation where you think to yourself, damn it, if only this character had a little bit more damage. The amount of times I had situations that would have been kill confirmed turned into a almost kill, only for the person to immediately heal itself back to full health and wipe all of my progress is so fucking frustrating. So as Spider-Man, generally, you want to be fragging the nurse. That's just kind of your thing. You go in, you hit them, you get out, and that's what it is. However, of the potential fights you can get in, Jeff can immediately heal himself back to full health after your frag, and Mantis is one of the hard Spider-Man counters. These are two of the most common healers in the game, and Spider-Man is pretty much fucking helpless against them. Now, that's not to say he's not going to be able to kill either. He can definitely get rid of a Jeff if you actively try and pursue or if it's distracted, but again, that's not really that likely in a high level. Pair this with the fact himself that Spider-Man cannot be overhealed, and the second you start going for the fragger, you're gonna have 5 big, buff, angry black guys on your ass faster than that one chick sitting on the couch. It's just rough, man. It really is. And I don't think that Spider-Man needs some, like, major overhaul in order to be useful. His kit as it currently is extremely fun. However, in order to continue functioning, he needs either some general cooldown alterations, some more damage, or a little bit of both. Also, maybe buff his ultimate. Like, either make it do more damage or make its charge way less, because it is so incredibly fucking annoying when you finally get the thing off for the first or second time in a match, which is going to be your last, by the way, and you just immediately get frozen, put to sleep, killed, or God forbid, a Doctor Strange just like shields you and prevents you from getting hit. I also do think it's kind of weird that for all of Spider-Man's games, he doesn't really have like a sticky sort of play style, and if you've played an old Spider-Man game, you kind of know what I'm talking about. I don't know, man. It is a genuinely tough situation because I feel like Spider-Man on a technical level, he works and he can be successful, but it's very dependent on what the enemy's doing. And I get that it's a team shooter and that is to be expected, but at the same time, even in casual settings, this can happen. It's not like a coordination thing. To my knowledge, he is one of the only characters in the game who has that issue to such a ludicrous extent. And it's difficult because if you do too much, he's too powerful. But if you continue to do nothing, he's just still weak. I don't know though. I've been autistically hyper-fixating over Spider-Man and how he plays in this game for a few days now, so I'd be genuinely interested to hear what you guys think about this whole conversation in the comments down below. You don't have to agree with me either. I really don't care. I just want to hear what other people have to say. So, that all being said, this is Solo signing off, and until next time, I will see you guys around. Farewell.